It's been a fantastic 4 years for Scottish sport at every level, with plenty to be proud of. But now it's time to raise the bar. Across Scotland, people are already working closely together, improving links between schools, clubs and performance sport. Now we want to build on these strong foundations. We want sport to be a way of life in Scotland, to be at the heart of every community, with everyone involved, working together, pooling resources and making sport world-class for everyone at all levels. We want people to enjoy sport at every stage of life, whether they're taking part or cheering from the sidelines. But to make it happen, we need people like coaches and volunteers, well-trained and supported, places to play and compete, well-designed, maintained and managed, plus a high profile to raise awareness about sport and inspire people. Do these things right and we'll get more people participating, so everyone can take part, stay involved for life and progress, develop and achieve their potential, whatever their level. Together we can do this in every environment in Scotland, inspiring and encouraging excellence and building strong networks and partnerships. So, from the pitch and pool to podium, during the training, the tears and the triumphs, we can create the perfect world-class environment for everyone. And to make the system even better, we should also ensure sport is accessible and can be enjoyed by everyone. We should also offer the best learning and training, working together, sharing ideas and making the best use of our resources. All these things fit together like this, so we can help people enjoy sport throughout their life, in every environment, sharing priorities and pooling resources, working together for the same goals. So that every leap, every laugh, every stroke, every shot, from grassroots to glory and everything in between, we'll be there, raising the bar and building a world-class sporting system for everyone in Scotland.
Okay, so that gives you a bit more of an insight into Sport Scotland's vision and their mission. Their vision is a Scotland where sport is a way of life, where sport is at the heart of Scottish society and has a positive impact on people and communities. This is something that they have a fair bit of work still to do within, and I'll say more about that later when we talk about physical activity rates in the country. Their mission is to build a world-class sporting system for everyone in Scotland at all levels in sport, and that's what we were just talking about a little bit earlier. So I'll say more about this later, but for now, let's look into how some of the partnerships in sport actually function in Scotland. So a huge part of delivering on the missions of Sport Scotland is about helping all these different strands of sport, of the various partners, to work together and encourage the development of all sports. So a good example of this is shown in the clip which I'll just show you in a second, where we see the development of the sport of rugby in the town of Perth in Scotland. In this clip you'll see how various strands of sport in Scotland work together to enhance the development of a sport in school, but also in the wider community, and how all of these things can work together. So in the clip you'll see a few different roles coming together to try and make sport work in this local area. So first of all you'll see the physical education lead officers. Now these are the people who control the quality and the quantity of PE in that particular region to see and make sure that a child comes into contact with a good, high quality and the right amount of physical education in school. That's the physical education lead officers. You then get the active schools coordinators. I've already spoken about them. They facilitate the role of the PE teacher to provide more opportunities and higher quality sports opportunities, something that it's just not possible for the PE teachers to provide as much as they should be, really. So things such as after school events during the school holidays or during the vacation. The school sport competition officers, they provide and help to run the competition structure for schools, for primary schools, for high schools, to make sure that schools are working together and that kids get the opportunity to compete at their own level. But as well as these school partners, we also have a lot of community partners that play a role in trying to pull all of this structure of sport together. The first of these would be the local sport development officers. Now this is a position which many of our students actually go into after they complete their sport development degree, a paid position within the local authority. They might be sport specific, so they might work specifically for rugby or for tennis, or they might be linked to many types of sports. Some of the sport development officers in Glasgow work with a multitude of different clubs like lawn bowling and tennis and badminton, and they work to develop these sports and look after and encourage on the voluntary workers who are working in the sports clubs. So local sport development officers work with local clubs but also work with schools and encourage sports clubs in schools. You also see community sports hub officers. Now I already spoke about community sports hubs as well. These are the areas in particular communities which try to pull all the local sports clubs together and create a hub where people who are interested in sport can come and find out more about what is on offer in their area and how they can get involved. The final role here is the Scottish governing body regional development officers. So these are people who are employed by their sports Scottish governing body or their national governing body to further the sport for a certain region and coordinate it. So they are the regional development officers, so they are in charge of developing sport in their region. And this could be quite a challenging job, pulling together all of the local clubs in their designated region and trying to enhance and develop the sport in that area. So in this clip, you'll see how all of these areas can work together to progress a sport within the Scottish system. So we'll just watch that now.
We think partnerships are the cornerstone of building participation, and simply because we don't have all the skills required to do that in our club alone. There's a vast amount of knowledge and experience out there, so we've got a policy within the club that we kind of ship in expertise from outside. I think the secret of working in partnership is to be enthusiastic and passionate about what you're striving to do.
I'm really proud of the two things. One is the development programme. I mean, it's been a long history and the success that we have had over the last 12, 13 years. But also the fact that we're more proactive now. We're really proactive in terms of new schemes, new ideas, and especially in terms of sharing expertise and new ideas from other sports. Maximising resources is a key aim and a key message that we're trying to do over the next 2 to 3 years. In particular, if you take the local area, in terms of schools, the active school coordinators are vital in terms of the work that we do, especially in terms of entry and timetabling. We have a partnership with Perth Academy at the rugby school. The other partner in that is the Scottish Rugby Union, and the three of us together devise the programme, set the timetable, and we also look at the idea of how it's to be delivered both in the school and also in the club.
We set up School of Rugby about 5 years ago. It was a partnership between ourselves, Perthshire Rugby Club and the SRU. That gives us lots of hours of delivery within school, so that Chris Pacey comes in and delivers School of Rugby sessions. I think the big benefit is the socialisation and the physical competencies that the kids gain through the participation in regular rugby sessions.
Well, the school rugby has been good because it all shows the aspects of fitness and rugby skills, but it also shows some theory side, do some testing. So I went and I done my refereeing course, and I have refereed a few adult games, and it's really boosted my confidence, and I'm actually working towards a coaching course. I wouldn't have played rugby unless I became part of the programme, and I wouldn't be the person I am today.
I think the reason that the School of Rugby is so successful here at Perth Academy is that the ethos of the school is one of inclusion and participation. The school acknowledges that effort and rewards it.
My role is all about the community, so I'm trying to raise participation rates in Perth and beyond, and trying to set up links between schools and ourselves and the club. Without opportunities in schools, we wouldn't get the kids that be playing rugby, and the school teachers, the relationship with the school teachers, we work with them really closely. We support the teachers to get better coaches, and we support them with their programmes, directly coaching the kids as well.
Okay, so that gives you some information about all of these different partners, how they work together to try and improve sport in schools for children who are coming into contact with this particular sport, but also how that then leads on to sport in the community. Now, you heard from the regional development officers and the local sport development officers who are trying to develop the particular sport in this example, which was rugby, and their role in getting things started in the schools, but then encouraging kids to carry on with this sport beyond school. And this is something which is incredibly important in Scotland, and something that we really need to try and develop as much as we can. If we look at the adult activity levels and the figures that we have at the moment from our Scottish Health Survey, which was conducted in 2014, you can see that 63% of adults were active at the recommended level. Now, the recommended level is 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous activity per week. And even though we see 63% of adults, when we break this down by gender, we have a much smaller proportion of women, adult women, than men who are meeting this guideline. Just 59% of women compared to 68% of men. Participation in sport or exercise tends also to decline with age. So though we see quite a good level of participation in those aged 16 to 24, for those aged 75 and above, it's right down there at 22%, and we really need to be encouraging our older adults to engage in physical activity more, and that's something I'm actually working in at the moment with some research into the impacts of walking football, which you can look into in your own time if you want to find out a bit more about that. There's some things about that on my Twitter page if you want to have a look on there. This also gives you some information about the most popular activities for adults, and that gives you an idea of what sport looks like amongst the general population. When we break this down to look at child activity levels, the figures are a little bit more worrying in some areas. So from this same health survey in 2014, it found that just over 3/4 of children, and these children that they looked at were 2 to 15 years, just over 3/4 of them met the guidelines of 60 minutes of more physical activity a day, and this is including school-based activity, so it could include their physical education lessons. And this was an increase over the 2008 figure, but again, when we break this down by gender, we see that boys were much more likely than girls to meet the guidelines. 79% of boys compared with just 73% of girls when you look at 2 to 15-year-olds. So this means that 3 in 4 children were active at the recommended level of at least 60 minutes every day, which means 1 in 4 was not. So participating in sport or exercise in the week prior to interviews, so some of the children were asked whether they'd actually participated just in the week before this data was collected. When they looked at 11 and 12-year-olds for boys, 79%, so nearly 80% of boys had engaged in physical activity in the week prior. The number was slightly smaller for girls, 76%. However, when we look at the figures for 13 to 15-year-olds, you can see that something certainly happens when boys and girls get to this age. And we know that there are lots of physiological changes, lots of mental changes that go on during this stage as well, but it has a major major effect on physical activity. So 71% of boys had participated in exercise in the week prior to interview. Only 56% of 13 to 15-year-old girls had participated in exercise in the week prior to interview. So that means nearly half had not participated in exercise, which is really quite worrying in a time that can shape your life so dramatically in terms of how you feel about exercise and what you might take on into your later life. So this is why it's so important to take a gendered perspective when we are investigating and analysing sport and trying to understand how to improve physical activity and sport levels. There are clear differences between boys and girls for some reason, and this needs to be better understood. We've got certainly lots of research in this area, but it's a persistent problem and something that needs to be managed and intervened with in some kind of way. So with this in mind, Sport Scotland currently has a few different initiatives running to try and tackle the issue of low physical activity levels in teenage girls. And there are a few schemes currently running, such as Active Girls, Fit for Girls and Why Dance Active. And I'll leave you to research these in your own time if you'd like to look into this some more. I've provided a few YouTube clips here which are quite useful, and these give you an oversight into or an overview, sorry, into what's actually going on with these schemes and the people who are involved in them. You may have struggled with the accents in the Perth clip earlier on, and these ones will be quite similar. You'll get a very good indication of the variety of accents that you find in Scotland and throughout the UK, so good luck trying to work out what everyone is saying. So to give you a bit of information about Fit for Girls, this is a joint initiative between Sport Scotland and the Youth Sports Trust, which promotes physical activity amongst girls through not directly working through the girls, but through training those who are already providing physical education for these girls. So Fit for Girls is all about providing training for those already working with girls, such as PE teachers, to make them more aware of some of the ways they can adjust lessons to encourage greater participation from this key group of girls, aged 13 to 15. It's funded by the Scottish Government, so the Government has a big role in trying to improve this situation, and it aims to try and build a positive future for girls' participation in lifelong physical activity. It's been in place since about 2008 in various different guises, but a key part of this is about really involving the pupils, the students themselves, as mentors and as sports leaders to act as peer support to the other students and those younger than them. So what happens in practice is the physical education teachers will be trained in various techniques they can use to try and improve things. Then they might go back into their school and encourage some of the older girls there, so maybe those in their final years of high school, to work as mentors or as sports leaders with some of the younger girls who are maybe 11, 12, 13, and who might get more of a response from this age group because it's someone who's almost a peer of theirs, almost. And some of the most positive aspects of the programme have included improved consultation with girls, so actually asking them, what do you want? What is stopping you personally from participating? If you could have anything to be improved, what would it be? Would you like different types of activity? Would you like better facilities? Would you like for the classes to be mixed with boys and girls, or would you prefer them to be girls only? You ask all these kinds of questions and try and tailor the physical education programme so that these girls will be encouraged to take part. And given how vulnerable and self-conscious many people feel at this stage of life and beyond as well, but particularly at this stage of life, it's in our interest to do as much as we can to help girls find something that they enjoy, something active that they can do that they can then take on into later life, and that is what this programme is all about. Some of the adjustments that have been made were really just things like improving the changing facilities by providing hairdryers that work, or enough hairdryers for everybody to use so that they can get sweaty and then have a shower and not feel worried about how they're going to look afterwards when you do feel very vulnerable and self-conscious at this age. So things like that, which can have a huge impact. So as I've already said, I'll leave you to have a look at some of the various clips on Fit for Girls that are on YouTube, and there's lots on the Sport Scotland website as well. The links on this page here will take you to a couple of reports which I think I would recommend as further reading after you have watched the clips. So in these reports you can access some information about the impact that Fit for Girls has actually had, and the first link here also provides some case studies of what actually happened when Fit for Girls was implemented in certain settings. So what I'd like you to do, or what I would suggest you could do, is have a read through the case studies, the impact reports, and compare these case study examples to maybe your own physical education experiences or other examples you can find from your local area or from around the US about how sports and physical activity opportunities for girls have been improved or have been worked on in some kind of way. The second link here will take you to the equality and sport research which was conducted by researchers at Sport Scotland on what equality in sport looks like in Scotland today, what the situation is for this. I'd highly recommend taking a look at this report, in particular the executive summary, which, as it would suggest, gives you a full summary of what the situation is for equality in sport at the moment, and it looks at areas such as ethnicity, disability, also pregnancy and maternity, which is something that I'm working in my own research at the moment. So I'll leave you to do that in your own time as some extra further reading, and I'd also highly recommend looking at the various journal articles which I mentioned at the very start of this presentation. But if there's any specific questions, further questions about sport in Scotland, about studying in Scotland, about how sport works in our university, or any of the points raised in this presentation, I appreciate that there might be a few things that are a little unclear. It's quite hard to give you all the information about sport in Scotland. But if there's anything you'd like to know more about, my email address is here on the screen, eilidh.macrae@uws.ac.uk, and I'm also on Twitter. You should be able to find me on there if anybody wants to reach out in that kind of way. So thank you for listening, and best wishes to everybody there in Denver from all of the staff and students at the University of the West of Scotland.